We'll call the Newington Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting of January 10th to order. First order of business is stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the secretary read the roll.
Chairman Aida.
Here.
Commissioner Camillo.
Here.
Commissioner Claffey.
Here.
Commissioner Fox.
Here.
Commissioner Payne.
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski.
Here.
Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Commissioner Vitalica. Commissioner Giangrave. Commissioner Graverman.
Here. We have all our commissioners here. We will not be sitting an alternate. The planner approval of the agenda, we have a change here.
Yes, yes, Mr. Chairman, I recommend deleting public hearing item C, that's application 42-17, the cheerleading at 181 Payne Road. The applicant has withdrawn the application.
Next order of business is public participation. Anyone from the public wishing to speak at this time, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we'll move into the zoning enforcement officer's report.
Okay. Everybody has the report in front of them. Just before we get into it, I got a call from Commissioner Payne about 2355 Berlin Turnpike, the McDonald's. We went out and just wanted to verify the dimension of that island. Myself and Eric from engineering, we went out, we measured and took the dimensions and checked the radiuses. It is per plan, almost exactly. While there, probably a dozen cars came in and made that left turn. So the one thing they haven't done yet is they haven't put the striping on the pavement. So I'm going to see, we're going to talk with them about if they maybe can paint that island yellow. That might prevent cars from hitting it. We have gotten a number of complaints with the old site that people were hitting it and it was destroying the front of their cars. And we're also going to have them change the directional sign that's on the west side to say do not enter, so as cars come down from the turnpike they will see a do not enter sign, because they seem to miss the sign that's on the right because they're looking at the site. So if we have one right there at the entrance, they'll say do not enter. We're hoping that will curtail it, but it's built. It's a spec.
That's good to hear. I know they make these 20-inch high plastic things that can be inserted into the concrete, drilled in, but they're flexible, so if they did get hit by a big truck, they would fold over and then pop back up. That might be something that would deter cars from going over, or so that they could see the concrete. I think the signage that you're talking about will help, hopefully, the situation for the left-hand turn.
I put a couple of different things. There's some other stuff that I asked them to do, is to fix some landscaping that had died since the last time they did the site. And so I had a bunch of items that I sent over to the engineering company that is monitoring the project, and kind of started the conversation on if they have any best management practices on what they could recommend that wouldn't require DOT approval, all this other stuff. So we're going to have a conversation with them, and I can report back to you what their recommendations are when we come up with that.
Commissioner Sobieski and then Commissioner Fox.
Mr. D'Amato, if I remember correctly, didn't we request that they get a hold of DOT, or the town request get a hold of DOT and make that no left turn sign larger and move it so people can see it where it's behind? It's being obstructed right now, I believe, by the 35 sign. And that was part of the recommendation, I think, that we asked them for.
I can check. I mean, it's there. I don't know off the top of my head without looking at the map if it has been relocated or moved. Signage is one of the things that they haven't yet finished, so we're still working with them on that stuff. So it's possible that they're still planning to, but I can verify that.
This would have been a request for the DOT to move the sign. It's their sign that's on there right away. Let them move it. Because it's a small sign. It should probably be a 30-inch or 34-inch or 36-inch sign. Big no left turn sign would help a lot because nobody's looking for it. It's the same height as a 35-mile-an-hour sign in front of it.
Yeah, what we observe when they're there is as they come down the turnpike, they're getting ready to enter the site, so they're looking this way, and they don't see anything that's there.
Right,
So that's why we just wanted to add something on that side of the road so they can see it.
I believe also there was going to be there was a request to put do not enter signs on the back of the stop sign. They were supposed to install two stop signs, stop controls, and on the submounted on the back, do not enter. I believe that was, if I'm not mistaken, if you can check the plans, I believe that's something we requested because of that. When Commissioner Minor was here, because of the way it was being hit, they were going in and out. We thought the delineation there would be better for the do not enter signs. If they're big enough, people are going to see them.
What the plan does call for is on the ground, when you're exiting the site, it will say stop, and then on the other side of the stop bar, it's supposed to say do not enter, I believe. I didn't see anything about the actual physical sign, but I mean, I can check. That's not hard to
Yes, would you
verify.
please? Thank you.
Commissioner Fox?
Yeah, just real quick. I remember when they came in with the petition for this particular building, they knocked down the old one and the Mr. Donut. And that's one thing that I mentioned every time we had a public hearing, but nobody. And I like Commissioner Payne's idea about those flexi cones, because I don't think any amount of paint is going to keep people from making left turns. So I think you'd need at least something like that. Thank you.
I don't know what we could ask them to do at this point. We've already approved a site plan. Planners to, I mean,
We could always ask, especially if it's a safety-related issue. We maybe can't mandate, but we can certainly ask.
Bowler's been very responsive to the stuff that we've asked so far, so, I mean, we can certainly just talk with them about it and see what they're willing, I mean, they've been really reasonable, so we'll start that conversation and see what they can come up with.
Okay. Any other questions on that issue? Any questions on the zoning enforcement officer's report for December? Commissioner Claffey?
Do we get any answer on putting more violations that are out there on this report? Like open, do we ever, do we look into
I
that?
looked
at
into it,
least?
our system cannot, I can't display that type of stuff with what we have. I looked into it to try to see if we can massage the report any other way. We can't.
And then, what about that one I sent in the other day on that?
On Kitts
large-
Lane?
Kitts Lane.
Yeah, that one will, I mean, we got it as a question. I wasn't sure originally because I was brought in on if it was a complaint or if you were just asking a question about the
Well, I
zone or
mean, I
whatever.
sent it in saying this is a commercial vehicle parked in a residential neighborhood. It's probably over 10,000 pounds.
Yeah, so it'll show up on the January report because I think that was like only 2 or 3 days ago. So that should show up in January.
Any other questions?
So,
Go
if
ahead.
something gets called in today, it goes on what report?
It shows up on the month that it's reported on.
So it would go in the January report, and you'll see it at the first meeting in February. Excuse me.
So there's no other way other than waiting every 30 days on a complaint, even though we meet every 2 weeks.
Well, if you have a question about a complaint, the best thing to do is just call me in my office, and I can pull up the address, and I can show, talk to you about what has gone out, what communications have come in. I mean, that's real-time information, but the best way for me to get you a holistic document that shows you what's happened over the month, I mean, this is the best way. This report's been living a lot longer than, I've been here, but if anybody ever has questions, the best thing to do is just call me, and I can tell you what's going on.
So how many open complaints are there in the town?
I can't tell you that. I don't know how many open, I don't have the ability to generate a report that'll tell you how many open complaints we have.
That might be something you want to look into, because right now it just shows the general public that you get 10 open items.
These
Probably have
are complaints
200.
that have been received over the month. So if you go and look at every month, you'll see what's coming in, but I've looked into it.
Or something old that something happened on during the month of December.
Right, so like, for example, this one on Brace, I mean, there's actions that are shown going back to October.
Yep.
Because it'll show the property and all of the actions. If there's an action in the month of December, it will show up here along with the rest of the property history. But if someone says to me, I've got this problem and I need 45 days to complete it, that month, it's not going to show because 45 days is obviously greater than that 1 month, so it's not going to get picked up on that report. And I don't have the ability within the program to bring along with me everything from the previous month. Literally, all I can do is I can go in, I put in the year, and then I put in the month, and it prints the report. I can't do anything else. And that's just, that's the way it was designed. We're at the mercy of what we have.
Commissioner Payne?
I was wondering, Mr. Chair, how we're making out on the other things. The enforcement officer was going to drive around and talk to the people that have different A-frame signs out and pass them the new regulations. Have we progressed with that at all? I noticed that we still only had one person come in, but there is still a lot of A-frames out there. So if we could get an update on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, some of the A-frame signs that we have seen recently have been in the right-of-way, so we've just been removing them. I have a number of them in my office. I have made a couple of phone calls to some of them, and there are a couple particularly on Market Square that I need to get in touch with the folks on. But, we're just making our way around and trying to continue to educate people, on the regs.
I thought we were at one time, we got the impression that you were going to give us a report on what on the drive-bys. The twice a week, you're still doing that?
Yeah, I have a document that I created that shows what streets, what days I've gone out and what streets I've been on those days. So it's literally just the date, and then it has all the streets, and it's just a check mark for each of those. So I have that spreadsheet. I don't know the best way to present the information to you. I can certainly look at trying to make that a part of the monthly report so that maybe it's an attachment or something. You could see which days I was where. That'll show you where I was, what day. I don't know how else to get you the info to show you.
That sounds like that would do it.
A list of who you talked to, or?
Yeah,
we still see the signs on the turnpike and stuff, and I'm just concerned, and I think some of the other commissioners might be concerned. A couple of these are right on the turnpike, and then if you look close by, there's illegal signs close by. So if you were on the turnpike, I'm not sure why anything in that area wasn't addressed at the same time that you addressed a complaint or something else.
Did you say Aldi?
No, I just said,
Aldi.
no.
Yeah,
I didn't give specifics, but I know that there's a few of these on the turnpike, there's signs close by that are illegal too. So I'm wondering why those signs didn't get addressed when you were in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I don't know what days they go up. If you want to give me the addresses, I can look at them, but, I don't know what addresses you're talking about, so I can't tell you if I saw it, if I didn't see it. I'm obviously not ignoring anything. It's just a matter of what's out there when I'm there. So if you want to give me the addresses, I can look at them. I can go out and take a look at people.
Well, that was the whole purpose of the drive-through, though.
Right, but I can tell you I was at a certain property on 1218, but if the sign goes up on 1219, it's not going to...
The signs that I'm referring to are up and are always up.
Okay, well, definitely send me those addresses or get them to me.
I don't think it's my job as a commissioner to send you the addresses, but there's still illegal signs there on the turnpike, and they need to be addressed.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a little, it's a little discouraging that we spent months and months with the sign regulation, and we had a lot of public, a lot of business people come in, and we only got one. It's been passed for how many months now?
Well, one applicant.
September.
Yeah,
Only had one
since
applicant.
September, and we only had one applicant come in for a sign, which was Stu Leonard's. that wanted the Christmas tree sign on their building. So for all the clamor from the public and the business community, no one has come in to even apply for a permit for an A-frame sign. I find that, I don't know if it's funny, but it's disturbing.
Frustrating.
Yes. So the people that do have the A-frame signs, we got to at least get them to acknowledge that they have them, and if they want to continue to have them, they have to come in and pull a permit and come to the zoning board. Commissioner Claffey.
Two questions, Mike. 92 Moreland, running a landscaping contracting business. At that house, that's that yellow house, did you see any of the stuff that's stored in the backyard in the way back? Would it behoove us to add to this, all those other violations outside of just running a business is one thing. All the material and debris and trucks and trailers and plows and everything else, that's a separate, could be, or is it not a separate violation?
And that's all part and parcel of the business. I mean, if they cease running the business from the property, those should leave, because if you have a truck that's, that's the way I view it. I mean,
Okay.
you can tell me, oh, we changed the address, now the mail goes to a P.O. box, we're not running it from there, but the trucks and the material and the trailers and the plows and the this and that. So, I mean, we're really looking at all the stuff that's on the property as part of the business.
But with you saying that you could change the address to a P.O. box, the vehicles that are out of compliance now you have to start the process over to go back after them because they're not running the business out of there anymore.
They
Or
are.
the P.O. box.
No, that's why all of that is part and parcel of the violation.
So that includes all the trailers,
Correct.
trucks, debris, storage, tarps, everything. That one running landscape business encompasses all of that.
Correct.
Okay. And then on 23 Whiteside Street, has that come into compliance?
23
The
Whiteside.
last one.
Last one.
I met with the owner as it shows on here, and I believe in my notes, when he came in on the 18th, 50% or more he had fixed when he came in, and the rest he needed some time to figure out what he was going to do.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions for the zoning enforcement officer? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Remarks by commissioners. Any remarks at this time? Commissioner Sobieski.
As Chairman Aida, several people came up to me, residents, and watched the last meeting on TV, and they were not happy with the way the meeting was conducted. I don't want to go into this. I'm just saying that, as commission members, we should listen to what people have to say and not start debating with them. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioner remarks? Commissioner Fox.
No, I didn't want to expound on that, but if you remember, I got so upset with it that I walked out, and I'm glad there was nothing left. And I think Commissioner Sobieski is 100% correct. We are the Town Plan and Zoning Commission. We represent our town, and I don't know how to explain, we should be acting like adults instead of yelling across the table at everybody, insulting the town planner. I'd rather not see that again. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioner remarks?
One thing, Frank.
Yeah.
If I would like to expound on that and agree wholeheartedly with all the commissioners that have spoke prior, but also expect that out of the general public that is here, regardless of anything, that you respect the position that we hold and not sit out there and laugh and giggle and do things like that. So it goes both ways in this town, so.
Moving on, next, any other commissioner remarks? Anything? Got another chance at the end of the meeting. Next item on the agenda is public hearings. We'll have the secretary read the procedure for public hearings.
The order of proceedings at a public hearing shall be as follows.
A, convening by a chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by the applicant limited to 20 minutes unless a specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitation shall be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. In no case shall an extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Please read petition 3617.
Petition 36-17, special permit, section 6.2.5, freestanding sign, business sign, at 3318 Berlin Turnpike and Costello Road. Stone Rock LLC, owner Michelle Lawrence, 55 Willowbrook Drive, Berlin, Connecticut. Applicant contact continued from November 8, 2017.
Is the applicant here? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and make your presentation.
Bruno Zavarella, manager of Stone Rock LLC, and that's where the property is. We are still waiting to get an approval for this sign at the street on Costello Road. And originally, we were told that it's, as far as the square footage of the sign, it's within the limits of the square footage that we applied for. But I guess the reason it was denied was because of the traffic coming to that side of the building, and I don't know, I still don't understand why it's not approved. We still want to go in with the same sign. We, on today's agenda, are, I mean, there's no real changes to the sign, so I'm not sure.
Okay. If I remember correctly, you were supposed to come back in with a overall master plan of the property to determine parking and
If that's under this similar,
planner, does that fall under proceeding the right way?
Well, yes, and that's why I brought this back from hibernation, because later on tonight's agenda is the site plan modification that Mr. Zavarella has proposed. And if the commission wants, we could even include in the record for this public hearing that site plan, if you'd like, to give you a better sense of the whole project.
Well, I think the sign is predicated on what he does with the rest of the property, because the problems that we saw with the sign there was the actual roadway into the back there.
Right.
And the parking and the storage of granite in parking places, and expansion of the uses there, and whether there was enough parking for the uses. So it's a whole master plan to determine whether it's not just the sign. It's
correct.
because the sign is predicated on on how that driveway is constructed.
So if that's under the same agenda, we have a site plan modification here that was part of this agenda.
Bring that into this discussion, the site plan?
I think you have to, or else you can't proceed with the sign.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we doing that now, or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so if we can get the site plan up on the screen, I can.
Right. That's what I'm about to try to do.
Okay.
But I'm technology challenged. My daughter has a lot of fun with me. All right.
So we're taking up a new business item
We're going to add to the record for this public hearing the site plan.
which is under new business 4317 site plan modifications. So we're
Correct.
going to incorporate that with the public hearing 3617.
Right.
Okay.
So, Mr. Zarella, you're probably going to want to explain to the commission what you plan to do to the driveway, because that was a concern that they had.
So the lower southeast or west side of the site there, where the new parking lines are shown, is what the modification is. There originally were granite slabs placed there for display. We're now relocating those granite slabs and kind of consolidating that whole thing. Instead of showing the whole face of the slab, we're consolidating them more like storing them like you would books. And that's going to it's hard to point out that place where the new granite storage is, but it's on the lower right.
You want to come up here and point to it?
Sure, I would love to. Yeah. Oh. If we can drop the view down slightly. Okay. So here originally is where the granite was stored for display. We're now moving that over to this place where there's a dumpster there currently. We're going to remove that dumpster and store that granite here. We're also going to make lines here to show that, so that the direction of traffic kind of flows more in that way. Also here we'll line this so that we get more storage. We're going to add some slabs either side to extend that current slab. Here then, add the parking spots here, which are 18 spots, and all the clearances meet the criteria to allow for that parking. And we are also adding the sign here that stops trucks from going around that way. You can bring vehicles that way. So we'll have the arrows put down, which aren't there currently, so that the traffic is dispersed properly. And that's the proposal. This road currently is shown 24 feet, but there's, like the curbing comes around here and there's a fence here which encroaches on it and closes down to 14 feet. It was never built the way it was shown on the drawing, so I propose to finish that and complete it the correct way and get that clearance of 24 feet in the spring. And that'll allow for the vehicles coming the way here and opening that up to what was originally proposed. And that should allow for the flow there. I think that's what you're referring to, the restriction
Yeah,
here.
restriction there, and also the restriction at the mouth where it goes into the actual property, if you go up more, up
Up
in
here?
there. Yeah, and then now you're putting that granite storage there, you're choking that down a lot more, because you're looking to get tractor trailers in there, right?
Well, I mean, most of the trucks that'll come in here, the biggest truck would be for delivering granite, and they're not really tractor trailers, they're more like 24 footers, so they're not 40-foot tractors.
Who did the plans?
Bunch of them.
Bonjour. Did you give them any indication as to the?
Mr. Chairman, could you speak into the mic so that the...
Did you give them any indication as to what type of tenants are occupying the building for parking?
Well, currently, there's
Requirements.
just one tenant, and that's Zavarella Granite and Marble. But we're now advertising aggressively to fill the rest of the spots, and we have a few possible tenants.
And what did he use for criteria to determine the parking requirements?
Well, we just brought in as many spots that were possible for the site and still meet all of the guidelines as far as two-way traffic, 26 feet, I believe it is. I actually physically went out there and measured it to make sure that we'd get that, or 24 feet. According to Bon Giovanni Group, it works as far as the engineering end. And it brings in 18 more parking spaces, which will allow more versatile for certain tenants. Kind of semi-retail,
You, as the staff looked at the parking requirements.
Yeah, Mike, do you want to speak to the process when units are proposed for a new tenant?
Talking about moving forward or this plan?
Both moving forward and this plan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the total count on site is now. The area that he's proposed, I mean, I didn't review this plan. So I assume Craig did. But we'll obviously look at the proposed uses when the site was originally approved and determine the spaces from there. But because of the way that it was designed, I mean, what does it say up top there? The zoning schedule for the total number of spaces. Parking.
64.
Yeah, so.
That's with the revised plan.
So, I mean, if you go retail or office at 5 per thousand, I mean, you're talking over 10,000 square feet of retail space that's available. The Zavarella granite and marble, that is Unit D,
Yeah, that's unit.
which is warehouse.
5,400 square feet.
Yeah, so that's not going to contribute to the retail count. So I don't know what the total square footage is of the building, but we would look at that when they come in with. Obviously, a restaurant and that type of thing wouldn't fit in this category because of the parking requirements, but I think there probably is enough at this point for retail, but I haven't reviewed it to be able to tell you. I don't know.
Well, these spots here would be semi-retail and then semi-warehouse. So you might
where's-
have retail in the front with warehouse in the back.
Where's the parking for those spots?
There's parking here,
Okay,
there's parking here, there's
okay.
parking here, there's also parking in the back for employees, and then this whole row of parking here.
Well, what about the other building that abuts the piece? Got the other building there, you shared parking with the
Yeah, well,
other
that
building?
building, that's these spots here, which are part of this building here. But these spots are part of this.
Yeah, I mean, because of the way that they're more like a business condo, like you
Business
said,
condos.
you might have like a showroom in the front and then the warehouse or stock in the back. So even though those units, you can't see the floor plans, the entire space is not devoted to any type of a retail component.
Right.
And that's not intended to.
Right.
So you're never going to have total occupancy of retail.
Absolutely not.
So I think,
It's
I
not
don't,
laid out for that, and it doesn't really fit that type of business model. You know, aside from maybe this front unit here. It's the most retail out of all.
Okay.
Just trying to get the space ready to lease up during the spring.
Any commissioner comments? Any questions on the plan? Okay. So that brings us back to the sign. So you're, I don't think we want to see the sign up until you did the driveway,
Fair enough, yeah.
if we approve the sign.
I think the sign was approved for the square footage, but the actual placement of it wasn't.
Well, no, the staff has reviewed the sign, the size of the sign to be in compliance with the regs allow, but it's still up to the commission whether to give you permission to install the sign.
Install it, right? Okay.
Okay. Seeing no questions from the commissioners, we'll open it up to the public for public comment, and we'll move the item. So if you sit down, we'll have the public comment, and then we'll
Thank you.
move the item to different section of the agenda. So is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to speak against this application? Okay, seeing none, wish the commission to do what? Want to move this to old business and act on it at our next meeting after discussion?
Make a motion, move to old business, close, move to old business. Second.
Made and second,
At the next meeting?
yes. Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we'll move it to the next meeting, and we'll have discussion, and we'll make action at the next meeting. Okay. Mr. Mr. Secretary, please read petition 3417. It's a continuation of a hearing we started in December.
Petition 34-17, special permit, section 3.4.4, home occupation at 172 Indian Hill Road, Amy Berube, 172 Indian Hill Road, Newington, Connecticut. Applicant, owner, contact, continued from December 14, 2017.
The applicant here? Representative, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Robin Pearson. I'm an attorney with the firm of Alter & Pearson in Glastonbury, Connecticut, and here with me this evening is Megan Hope, an associate lawyer in our firm, and also the applicant, Amy Berube.
Okay. Mr. Planner, if you bring us up to speed as to...
Right, we kept the hearing open to follow up on an allegation that a complaint had been filed with the police department regarding the dogs, but also to see if there had ever been a complaint filed with the police as far as the noise of the dogs. The ZEO contacted the animal control officer and the dispatch to see what the history of complaints filed against this property were, and I could paraphrase it, but Mike, since you're still here, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think it's in there too, if people want to follow along. I contacted the records department to go through basically the history of the property, because as Craig had mentioned, following the last meeting, there was, number one, some questions from commissioners about noise complaints and if those are treated the same, and so we went and looked both on the animal control side and on the PD side, because if somebody maybe just called about noise and didn't tell dispatch that it was about dogs, it might not necessarily go to the ACO, so we checked both sides, neither. And as you can read here, both the PD and the ACO have no complaints for barking dogs or anything relating to the business. We went back to 2010, and then to 2013 on the ACO side. So I think there was one other thing that I was going to check.
Well, there was also the issue of whether a state license was required. That was the other reason we kept the hearing open, so the applicants could discuss that in more detail.
Yeah, the only other thing that I checked was regarding the specific, it was brought up at the last meeting that a complaint, someone had made a complaint regarding the property, and I was not able to find evidence of that in working with the records department. So that's the complete history, is that other than the applicant finding dogs that were roaming and holding them until the animal control officer could come and pick them up and relocate them, find their owners, there's been no activity associated with this business or this home going back to those respective times.
Okay, that was a question that you had, Mr. Claffey.
Yeah.
Is that
suffice.
satisfy your...
Satisfies me, thank you.
Are there any other, well, why don't you give us some information that you might have, any additional information?
Thank you. First of all, we did note that 3 items that were referenced at the last presentation might not have made it into your official record, so I'd just like to give those to you. One was a petition in support of the application. One was a map that we showed, which is a street map and just shows the location of the property. And then there were 2 letters that my associate read to, or portions of, into the record. One was a November 28, 2017 letter from Andrea Otterino, DVM, from the AA Veterinary Hospital, and also one from Carol Bazile, 72 Florence Street, Newington, Connecticut, dated December 14th. So just to be sure, I just want to make sure they're in the record.
Right, let me take a second to go over what we do have in the record at the moment. We have the minutes from the October 11 meeting. We have the PowerPoint presentation that the applicant made at the December 14 hearing. We have the report on outreach efforts. We have the petition signed by a number of neighbors, and letters of support from Colleen Camo, Megan Richardson, letter signed by Michelle Genowitz and Charles and Maddie Blevins. A letter from Lauren Gadhill. A letter of support from Lynn Fortin of Newington Veterinary Clinic. And also submitted was a letter in opposition that was received from Suzanne Renowitz.
No, that was not in opposition, that was in favor of the...
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so that's, well, so we have a letter from Suzanne Renowitz also. So I don't have the map that you're referring to. Okay, I do now.
I think we're all set, given that the PowerPoint is in the record. I did take a look at the minutes from the last proceeding, and we were requested in particular to take a look at whether or not a license would be required for this facility. And let me tell you what we have discerned since the last time we were together. I think I testified last time that Amy Berube had advised us, when I say us, my law firm, that she had indeed pursued the issue of a license with the State Department of Agriculture. And more specifically, I'd like to just be sure you understand what has come to pass and what gets us to this particular point with regard to licensing. About a year after her business was established, she believes it was 2012, the local animal control officer from Newington, it was a man at that time, she said, she didn't recall the name, came to the house, and he indicated that he had learned of her business, and that she discussed it with him, while he said he had no particular issues, he said he would have to let the Department of Agriculture, the State Department of Agriculture, know about her business and the fact that she was doing dog sitting at her home. And a couple of weeks later, a gentleman did go out to her home, again this is in 2012, from the Department of Agriculture. She did not recall his name either, but she discussed her operations with him, went through everything, and was told by him at that time that they had no particular license to which she was subjected, and he had no issues, and he went away. She continued her business as a result of that transaction with him without pursuing any additional licensing with the state. So I just want to make it clear, both the local animal control officer and the State Department of Agriculture did know about her operations, but it is true that based on that representation from the gentleman who came out from the State Department, she did not go back every year or check and see if there had been any changes or whether she came under any licensing. So you asked us to check into the issue, and we have had several conversations with the State Department of Agriculture since our last meeting, and they are of the opinion that she does require a pet facility license. So we accept that because a lot of people you can argue with, but the state of Connecticut is not typically one of them. So we now understand that they are going to require her to come in and get a pet facility license. We've looked at the license form, we've advised our client of this situation, and it's clear that the purpose of the license is to ensure that the dogs are safe, that they're adequately protected, but she cannot even apply for that license until she has zoning approval. So it's not that the license comes first, she needs zoning approval, and they're not even going to take her application unless she has evidence of zoning approval. It's a $400 fee. We're confident she'd be able to get her license, but they do have to have somebody come out and take a look at the facility. So that gets us to where we were at the beginning of this, whether or not a license is required. That's still a state proceeding. It's separate and apart from what you look at. The state looks at different things than you look at. You look at whether or not this particular use as a home occupation is compatible with the neighborhood and fits in and makes sense under your own regulations. The state is going to be looking at whether her house, assuming you approve it for a home occupation, is a safe place for those dogs. She's going to have cages, there are certain requirements that they'll have, and she'll have to comply with those in order to get her permit. Two different procedures, totally separate, but we acknowledge, and Amy acknowledges through me, as I'm speaking for her, that she will have to get this pet facility license as far as the state of Connecticut is concerned.
Can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
I hate to interrupt you while you're in the middle of but just so I understand, is this a new classification that they've come up with that they're talking about, or is this?
I don't think so. The regulations are still the
They're
same. It's
actually-
called pet facility license. That's what it is.
So it's an established, and it's on the books now, that people that want to, normally if it would be in a commercial zone, would need this type of a
Got
license?
nothing to do whether it's a commercial zone or not.
Well, it has to do with zoning, so that's.
It has
what
to
we're
do with
concerned-
zoning,
Right.
yes. It has to do with
Okay,
zoning.
so this is,
But that's an important, the fact that you're asking me that question makes me feel that I should speak a little bit more about the distinction between the state's licensing and your licensing.
we understand what our role is and what the state role is.
Okay.
I believe, at least I do, and I
Because
think
there
the
are
rest-
different standards and different tests, and this is not this can be regulated by you through your home occupation. It's not required to be in a commercial zone. If you don't feel that it meets the requirements of your home occupation permit, or is not worthy of an approval because the way she operates it doesn't meet your standards, that's a different issue. But I'm not talking commercial versus residential. We're applying for the home occupation permit in her residential home.
Understand.
So again, I think we've established that, not unlike other types of applications, if you,
Okay, go ahead.
just as you might have someone coming in for a liquor permit for a restaurant, obviously they'd get zoning first before they go to the state to get their state licensing. And for any home occupation, a lawyer, a dentist, they would need other permits in order to run their business in their home, which they would get after they pursued zoning, such as a health department permit for, the facilities to do the work say in a medical type office. So this is not unusual to first have to get from you the local zoning approval. So that was one of your questions. Ms. Berube will pursue such a permit, should you approve her home occupation. I think it's important for me to go through the standards for home occupation. I believe we meet all of the findings that you need to be able to decide this application in her favor. You have two different sections. You have the home occupation special permit 3.4.4. Just very quickly, and I'll leave you with our findings. But first and foremost, this is her residence. She will not have any employees at this particular site, although your regulation as a home occupation would allow at least one employee. We don't believe there's any evidence of the home occupation that would be visible from outside the dwelling. You do allow for a sign, but she's not even asking for a sign for her business. As she indicated to you, and as you saw from the materials that we submitted, the backyard is entirely fenced and screened and encloses the entire area, and the presence of dogs in the backyard, we contend, are not evidence of a home occupation. You can't see them from outside the property, but even so, if one were to be able to see through that fence and see dogs in there, you'd have no way of knowing that they are not a resident's dogs or dogs that are there because they're paying to be able to be there. So there's simply no way that construes evidence, the way her facility is set up, evidence of the business from outside her property. The floor area meets your requirements. Parking, we've already talked with Mr. Minor. He doesn't believe any parking is required. We certainly have presented testimony to you that it's not needed. You may recall the way this operates. An individual drives up at an appointed time. Ms. Berube comes out of her house through a closed gate. The client doesn't even get out of the car. She escorts the dog into her house, closes the gate, and the client goes away. There's no need for permanent parking on the site. Should there be some reason that you saw that it was necessary to do that, we certainly have the area in which we could. As far as the requirements that the home occupation cannot be detrimental to the health, safety, welfare, and property values in the neighborhood. And it talks about renewing the permits over time to make sure that there is a check by this commission on whether or not the use, should you approve it, is continuing in a manner that will not be disruptive to the community. We certainly provided extensive testimony at the public hearing that the proper buffering exists at the home site. The entire backyard of the property is enclosed by a 6-foot solid stockade fence or chain link fence with privacy screen inserts in certain parts of the property. You've heard that the applicant maintains strict protocol to prevent dogs from barking within the backyard. We now have the report from the police department indicating that a review of records since, I believe it was 2010, confirmed that there have been no noise complaints made regarding this business. So strict procedures are also maintained for the health of the dogs, and that they are required to have up-to-date vaccinations, be clean and in good health, not have fleas, and are not permitted to even be there unless they have not been sick for the preceding 30 days. Aggressive and unsocialized dogs are not permitted. Dogs must be spayed and neutered. And she is fastidious about cleaning up after the dogs. As we represented, anything that's left in the yard is picked up and flushed down the toilet. So these protocols by her that she uses now and has used for the last 6 years could be adopted by you as conditions regarding this home occupation. And as regards to the final criteria, the applicant is not proposing a use that is excluded by the home occupation section. With regard to your overall special permit standards, I think it's particularly telling. Section 5.2.6, the first thing you're supposed to look at when you decide overall a special permit is whether there's a need for it. And residents spoke on December 14th and indicate there is a definite and specific need for a dog-sitting business in a home environment, as commercial kennels are not options for dogs with certain emotional or physical characteristics. You heard some pretty heartwarming stories, I think. There are people that depend highly on this type of operation. Many dogs are not suited to more commercial type dog-sitting operations, so there's definitely a need for this. I won't go through all of these except to say probable and future character of the neighborhood in which the use is located. You have the unique situation here where this has already gone through a trial run for 6 years. And you've heard even her neighbors have come out in support, except for one, in support of this application because it has not been disruptive. You've heard many of them say, we didn't even know it was an ongoing operation here. So there's nothing proposed physically to change on this property, so there's nothing to say that this particular use is going to be disruptive to this neighborhood. Accessory buildings, there have been no changes that are proposed. It will remain as a single-family home. Traffic circulation, I just described for you how that works, presents no problems, and I think that's quite evident by the fact that it's one car at one time picking up or dropping off. The home is serviced by both public and water, sanitary, sewer. There are no signs, lighting, and landscaping are proposed or needed with regard to this. And safeguards to protect adjacent properties, we've already talked about the comprehensive buffering as well as the protocols that are undertaken by the applicant to make sure that there are no issues. She remains totally committed to those. So for all those reasons, we believe this is very worthy of home occupation approval. I ask, please, that you not close this hearing. If you still have any questions for us, this is very important to Ms. Berube, as it is, frankly, her livelihood, but it's also very important to her and to her clients with regard to the ability to keep this going. So we hope you can see that it's an appropriate use. Maybe other dog-sitting operations might not be, but based on the circumstances of this one, and you decide each on a case-by-case basis, this is totally appropriate for a home occupation approval.
Just for the record, can you tell us the number of dogs that will be
Yes.
at any one time and overlapping? Do they stay overnight? Also, the requirement C under 3.4.4, the 25% area of the house dedicated to the business. From some of the testimony, it sounded like the dogs had free run of the whole house.
Well, the dogs are primarily kept in the kitchen, which is within that restriction. Does she currently let dogs roam? Roam. Has she taken them upstairs or onto the couch to sit with her? The answer is yes. That would be something. The space is not dedicated outside of the kitchen to the animal use. But if you were to see fit to put a prohibition in against anything like that, I'm sure she would abide by it.
In the number of dogs?
The number of dogs is 4, but because she does overlap, we've asked for 5, because there can be times when there is an overlap. And yes, she does keep, she pet sits for people when they go away on vacation, so she can have a dog staying overnight at the house.
When you say 5, she owns 2 dogs, personal dogs herself? Are
Correct.
dogs included in the 5? So
No,
she
no,
only,
no.
it's 5 plus her 2
Correct. Maximum, yes.
maximum? And they
Well, there's no restriction to how many personal dogs you can have. I assume she's
I
not looking to have
understand that.
more, but she does
I'm
have.
trying to get an idea of the size of the operation, because the number of people that came and spoke the last time would indicate to me that there was
50 people, 50
Yeah, like,
dogs.
yeah,
No, they,
1,000
different
dogs coming in and
times and
out.
different needs, and when people need them. No, she is committed to what we said, there's no question.
It gave the impression, and I've heard it from other commissioners, that there was, from the number of people that came and spoke, that it sounded a lot more than 4 dogs.
What I would prefer to do, we have submitted all of the information saying, typically there are 4 dogs on the premises, there can be an overlap with a 5th dog. I would prefer it if Amy came up and stated on the record that that's the case, but that is what we have testified for you already. Ms. Berube?
Hi, thank you.
You want to identify yourself?
I am Amy Berube, 172 Indian Hill Road. There were a lot of people that came to the last hearing. I think if you asked all of those people if I have turned them down for sitting at some point or another, they would say yes, simply because I was not willing to go over the number of dogs that I'm comfortable having in my home. So that really is the way that I keep it. They all know that once I'm full, I'm full. And that's it.
Just I want to make sure that the record's clear of what the requirements are, because,
Thank you. Stay just in case there are any other questions.
okay. Anything else you want to add?
No, but
At this
again, I
point.
would very much like an opportunity to respond to any questions should you
Yeah,
have. any.
I'm going to open it up to the commissioners, then open it up to the public. So for the commissioners, any questions for the applicant or their representatives? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, through the chairman. Ma'am, when you were speaking of the representative from the State Department of Agriculture that came, he was looking to license the facility as a pet facility. Would you equate that with a kennel or not? Or is this just a pet facility?
No, it was an operation that the local animal control officer believed might require licensing by the state. So the local animal control officer contacted the Department of Agriculture, and they came out, and they determined at that time that she didn't require anything. Or as the language you used, he said he didn't have a permit for which you could apply.
He didn't have anything to offer me.
So that was it.
Well, that's what I was looking for, because I believe at the last session we were talking about definitions of kennel, what the state defines a kennel as, and I didn't hear you say anything about it, and that leads me to believe that it's not a kennel, that it doesn't require any of the extra licensing that a kennel might.
It requires something called a pet facility license, and
Okay,
they
yeah.
lump a lot of things under that.
Is there a separate, something separate for a kennel?
No.
And there's no
No.
difference between
It's all
the
lumped
headings
under
of the, it's all lumped under one big thing?
pet facility license.
So a kennel in this pet sitting, what did you call it?
Dog sitting?
Dog sitting regulation are
apparently.
basically one and the same.
Apparently. I will tell you, I mean, I read the definition in the state statute for a kennel, and her operation doesn't meet the definition.
Yeah, see,
But again, if the
that-
state says you need it, I'm not gonna argue with the state, so.
And that's where we were coming from, was that we looked at at what she was looking for. We're saying, well, where does it fit? And the only place we could find it in our regulation where it had a fit was as a kennel. And when we start reading our own regulations, it regulates it in a specific way, which she does not meet.
Correct, I think that's fair to say. She's not a kennel, but I think she's a home
That's the problem,
occupation.
is that we're trying to define something that should have been defined in the past, and a more refined definition, so that our zoning regulations and even the state regulations define it as, because it's obviously, you're trying to make a distinction between a kennel and a dog sitting operation, and the state is saying, no, it's lumped in one big,
It is
one
lumped.
big category.
Yes.
And
And the reason
that's
is-
our dilemma.
Well, except that you don't really need to look at the state's
But
definition.
we look at our own regulations,
Right.
and when we look at the boarding overnight, we had a definition from the planner at one point that said, well, if it's overnight, it's a kennel. You had made that statement at one point.
Yeah.
So we took that, we start looking through our regulations to find out where it would, what our regulations start talking about kennels. And we've had experience with other operations coming in, looking for kennels or dog sitting or boarding in other areas. We had one specific case where in Twin City Plaza on New Britain Avenue in Newington, which is on the Berlin, New Britain line. It's a strip mall where they had a dog grooming operation, and they came in and asked for a boarding operation. And I don't even believe it came, because we did we find it?
Yes, Mike can speak to that.
Okay.
Actually, it might be good to get on the record.
This would be a good time to put that on the record, because this was a case that came before the board that was in a commercial zone, and we defined it as a kennel, and he could elaborate on what the outcome of that case was.
They came in to the office to looking for approval, staff approval for the addition to their existing facility, which would allow for them to board dogs. And our regulations require that kennels be associated with, or veterinary hospitals can have a kennel associated, and because of that, I told them it wasn't allowable, and they didn't pursue it any further. But they never made it here.
To the commission.
I told them that based on my interpretation, they did not fit that was not an allowable use.
And that was in a commercial zone, not a residential zone.
Correct, that is the industrial zone, if I'm not mistaken.
Which in the town of Newington is the least of the zoning designations would be industrial. You went as far as how they're presented. Any commissioner remark? Any questions for the applicant, Commissioner Sobey? Yes.
Yes, the person at that time that you're referring to is Wayne Fox. He has passed away since then. He was the dog animal control officer. I kind of equate this to basically a daycare, with the exception of the overnight part of it. It's almost like having a daycare facility in the house.
So you're equating the dogs to children?
Well, I'm equating it the same issue. That's what I'm saying. You know,
Daycares are regulated under the state of Connecticut?
Yes,
In-home daycares are, correct?
yes.
Yeah.
If I may, we would say the same thing. Your daycare, there are different classifications of daycare that are regulated by the state, and it depends on how many children are in the daycare facility. But for daycare that is, same number of dogs, daycare that has fewer than 6 children, it would in effect be a home occupation under your regulations.
Right, in which our regulations also has specific areas that relate to child daycare.
Yeah, but that's for ones that are above 6. That's when you go above 7. You have a special permit for daycare, 7 and above, but not for, it would be under a home occupation for below 7. That's in the house. It's still regulated by the state. You still need to get a license. But that's how it's handled by zoning in town. Would be very similar to this. And I heard you when you asked whether dogs are equated to children. I think there are 2 ways of looking at it. First, I heard a lot of people back there go, oh yes, I'm not a dog person, but clearly people treat their dogs like kids. So they love them. They're as much part of a family as children have. And they look for the kind of place that Ms. Berube provides to have somebody look after them. Dog sitting, child sitting, same kind of things. These clients want the same treatment for their dogs as people want for their children. Were she running a 6 or under daycare in her home? But the other thing that relates to that is in looking at the uses, it's still the same. As a home occupation, the standards that you look at are still have to be judged by you and determined by you to have been met in the same way. And that would include, the overall grouping of things that don't upset the neighborhood. So, it'd have to be safe, it'd have to be quiet, it'd have to be probably fenced in and screened. It's the same kind of thing. But like children, dogs are typically things that fit well into a single-family neighborhood. If you happened to peek through the fence and saw some children in that backyard, you wouldn't know whether it was a business, a daycare business, a child sitting business, or whether it was, a birthday party or somebody who likes a lot of children and has a lot of children in the family. Same thing's totally true with dogs. And Newington is a community that doesn't limit the number of dogs one can have in a household. And if you see dogs in the backyard, there's no way to distinguish those dogs or that activity from what would be happening, whether it was her dogs and her dogs having friends over, or a doggy sitting facility. So the impact and the feel in the neighborhood is the same either way. And I think the comparison to the daycare home permit or home occupation is exactly the same.
That's your opinion and Mr. Sobieski's opinion. Any other commissioner remarks? Commissioner Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a dog person either, but I think you've done an excellent job in presenting your position, and I think it's very clear that the neighborhood came out and spoke in favor of it, except for one person, and I'm pretty comfortable that Ms. Berube will do everything in her power to try to make sure that that person is as comfortable as she can be in an uncomfortable situation. I think you've proved that there is a need. I don't think it's disruptive to the neighborhood. So I don't have any issues with this, and hopefully the commission will move this forward and to take action on it.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner remarks? Mr. Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I too, and I think I mentioned this the first time this was brought up in October, that it's not much different than a daycare. The kids, children at a daycare have to get outside once in a while, play on the swings, and make a little noise, and The dogs, I don't know how much noise they make. They seem to be well-behaved dogs, and you don't have to worry about them getting hurt on swings or anything like that. So I really have no problem with it. And I've been sitting here, while you're speaking very eloquently, and looking at 3.4.4F. For this purpose, home occupations and professional offices do not include. Well, the things that they do not include are not here. But, I don't know, I think it may be a stretch, but I think this is a profession, and you might be able to consider it a professional office. Thank you.
Whatever works.
Any other commissioner comments? Okay, seeing no, I'll open up to the public.
Thank you.
Mr. Planner? Thank you. We had a tremendous amount of testimony at the last meeting. I would hope that we don't come back and have a repeat where we repeat the same things that we already have on the record. If there's anything new that you would like to propose to or say to the commission, we'd love to hear it, but for expediency of time, we spent a tremendous amount of time at the last meeting allowing everyone to speak. We would ask you to please not to repeat yourself of what you said the last time you were here. So with that, I'll open it up for people wishing to speak in favor of the application. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Commission. I was not here last week.
Okay,
My name is Debbie Labby. I'm from 32
Can
Basswood
you just
Street.
slide that microphone?
Certainly. I'm here with my husband, Richard Labby, from 32 Basswood Street. We are the owner of a 6-year-old Springer Spaniel named Corby, who unfortunately developed an anxiety disorder after coming home from a reputable kennel in town. It got so bad that he developed seizures after that we couldn't bring him to the groomer that he had been going to for 2 years. He'd had a seizure in front of me. We couldn't bring him to the vet. I couldn't bring him to work with me. We couldn't bring him to another building because he got anxious. It's really devastating to watch your dog have a seizure. It's like a child. It's very terrifying. Unfortunately, we had to go away. We had a planned trip. We could not cancel. We had no one to watch our dog. There's other options. Some people can bring people into their home and offer them their keys and have them come in and check your dog. But with Corby's situation, we didn't feel comfortable with that. We didn't feel comfortable having somebody come in and just see how he was doing and just check him. We found Amy. Amy invited us over for a play date. And it was a play date. We played at Amy's house with her dogs and my dog, so she wanted to see how our dog acclimated to her household. He did fine. But she even said, I really think you should leave for an hour just to see how Corby does without you. And so we did. He did fine, but she actually called me and she said, he's following me around behind my heels. Does he do that? I said, yeah, that's the kind of a dog he is. I go upstairs, he follows me. I go downstairs, he follows me. He's a people person. He needs somebody with him. And I explained to her the whole situation. I said, I don't know what we can do. She says, let's try it out. We tried it another afternoon just to make sure he'd be okay. And he was fine. And we had no one else. And Amy took our dog. Amy took our dog while we went away, and she did take him overnight. And it was great because we could call her 24/7 and find out how Corby was doing. You can't do that with a commercial kennel. You can't call at 2 in the morning and say, how's my dog doing? Is he okay? But Amy would send pictures, text us, let me know all the time how the dog was doing. She was wonderful. She's knowledgeable. She knows about pet care. She knows about emergency care. She has contacts. She knows about first aid. And there was never any other concern with Corby being there. And he was never there with a lot of dogs. He was there with her and her family, who treated my dog, just like they treated their dogs. We need Amy's. Like you said, it's a private care. Like some people look for private daycares for their children. They know that it works well in a home rather than going to a large facility. Corby can't go to a large facility now. We can't leave him anywhere, but we can leave him with Amy, but now we don't have Amy. And it's really very hard for me, and it's hard for my family, and it's hard for Corby. And we need Amy's like her. We really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Just show of hands. I know a lot of people came out to, people that are here in favor of this application, that just show me so that the commissioners get an idea of who's here. And I appreciate you coming out. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Hi, Diana Sarah, 237 Reservoir Road. I personally do not know Amy. I have not used her services, but I can tell you I drive down Indian Hill at least 15 times a week to go see my parents. I go by Amy's house all different times of the day and night. There is never any noise coming from that house. There's no litter, dogs roaming around. There's nothing. You would never know that there's a business there. I am in full support of this for her. I've had a dog that's had special needs in the past. Had I known she had a business there, she wasn't there 10 years ago when my dog had issues, but I lost a dog because another kennel did not dispense his medicine properly. So after I got home, the dog had a seizure and passed away. If his anxiety was that bad, I would have brought him there in a household, because that's the type of dog he was. He needed people around him to care for him, not just be left in a kennel all day long. So I am in full support with this. I don't see there's a problem with it. And like I said, I've seen her house. I know what it's like over there. I go down that area every day. So I'm in full support.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor that hasn't spoke before, or anything new to add? Yes, sir.
My name is Frank Avella, Plainville, Connecticut. I just want to confirm that when Amy said she does say no to people, I am one of those clients. She has refused me and said no, and it's regretful, but it does happen. She does keep a lid on how many dogs she will take care of at one time, and I'm proof of that. She'll help you find somebody else, but she's a stickler for keeping the numbers down. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Erica Thurman. Oh, I apologize, my voice. And I live at 105 Gilbert Road, and I came here last time. I didn't speak, but I'm a friend of Amy's. I'm not a client of hers, and I have, I'm not sure if I can say anything different from these lovely people who came to testify. I just want to say that I'm in full support, and everything they're saying I have witnessed, and it is very much true. So I sincerely hope that you guys are able to approve her request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll open it up to people that wish to speak in opposition to this application. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Eyes are glaring on me. Suzanne Paveluk, 346 Robbins Avenue, Newington. First issue I'll bring up is the inaccurate findings of my report to the dog warden about the issue when I presented it at least 3 years ago. And I met face to face with her when she did her investigation, and in fact found that it was a doggy daycare, and she indicated to me it was going to be shut down. So I find it hard to believe that there's nothing on record. When I did leave a voicemail, she returned my call on my cell phone, and we had a face-to-face when she walked my property to observe this. So I think that should be stated on the record, that either someone's fluffing this and pushing it under the rug, and it's not fair, because I have a voice over the 50 people behind me also. There was a cliche back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, not in my backyard. And that was just kind of a historical theme that people would use. This is really in my backyard, and it's not nice. you can't compare dogs to children. Barking, obnoxious dogs when I'm hanging my laundry out at 8 o'clock in the morning, pulling it in at 3 in the afternoon, and there are dogs barking. When I'm entertaining guests on my deck, would you like to come over and sit and listen to dogs barking? It's not pleasant. It is not pleasant. Going down to the property line to get some wood to put on the fire pit and being scared to death because there are dogs barking on the other side of the fence that you don't know are there. There was one evening in particular, I'd have to go back maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. My husband said to me, "You have to come down and look at this." There was a dog that was the size of a horse over there. And I'm not talking a Great Dane. This thing was gigantic. It was dark. We had to go get a flashlight to figure out what this thing was. So I'm not in theory that there are 3, 4 dogs there at a given time. There are a lot of dogs there, and they bark. The testimony that they got from all of the neighbors saying, "It's not a problem, it's not a problem." Of the 10 houses that surround this piece of property, 9 of those people don't use their deck, don't come in their backyard. They don't have dogs, they don't have children, their children are gone. I'm the only one using my deck out there, and I'm being disrupted by it. That's all I have to say, not in my backyard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Seeing none, I'll allow you to, a quick rebuttal
Yeah, because there's one. You can't even account them.
if you choose to rebut at this point.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it could have been those dogs barking, not.
So I just would like to address the barking issue. Almost all of my neighbors have dogs. Just about every single one of them. Plenty of my neighbors entertain outside. I've seen them. I've socialized with them. There are dogs barking in the neighborhood almost all the time, but it's not my yard. There are dogs that bark in all of the yards. There will be dogs in my yard whether I'm allowed to continue sitting or not. I will always have my own dogs. If I'm not allowed to sit, I will probably own more dogs. It is not going to change. There will never come a point in time that my yard does not have dogs in it, personal or otherwise. As soon as the dogs start barking and I hear, I go outside and I call them in. Always. So I'm totally in disagreement to what she said.
Before you go, would you entertain if some neighbor were concerned and they called you, would you immediately take care of that dog barking if there
Absolutely.
were one?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
The person that spoke in opposition, you have an opportunity to come back up and make another statement, and that would end the proceedings. Would you like to say anything else? Okay. Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner, comments? Commissioner Claffey.
To address all the commissioners, in response to what Mike had done for me, my question on complaints brought to both the police department and the animal control officer. Thank you for getting that information, but I don't think there's or hasn't been any noise issues. We know that, so I just want to, that was really my only concern, was not that I'm against or for or anything like that. I put my feelings for dogs aside in this commission, and it was just to see per record if there was any noise complaints, that's all. It wasn't to ruffle anyone's feathers with noise issues. It was just a specific follow the procedures, let's see if there's any noise issues, and be done with it, so. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments at this time? Mr. Payne?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we close petition 34-17 and move it to old business for discussion next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, could I just, sorry, I just remind the commissioners, if you heard anything during the testimony that you're not clear about, or you have some confusion or questions, now's the time to ask the applicant to elaborate on that, so that we don't have to be in a situation where we might want to reopen the hearing later on, because you realize now that maybe you didn't really understand something the way you thought you might have. So give a moment to replay in your minds what you heard, and if you have any questions, ask them now.
I have a question. I would like to review the state regulations that they made reference to, just to make sure that what I'm hearing is...
Okay, would you like a copy of the pet facility license application?
I would like to see the application and the
22-344.
and the regulation, to see if there's a determination between this and a kennel, or what exactly the regulation states. Because
Right.
it's obvious that if this is approved, that she's going to have to get state approval.
Okay, I think that's a reasonable thing to ask for. I think that, though, would require to keep the hearing open, because when you get those regulations, there may be something in those regulations that you're concerned about, and you're going to want to discuss with the applicant, which can only take place in a hearing context. Now, we're at like the 30th day, so if we want to keep the hearing open, and I think that would be a good reason to keep the hearing open, we would need the applicant's consent to keep the hearing open.
Commissioner Camillo?
On the application for pet facility, there's a sign-off for the ZEO. Like anything else, you can put your restrictions or your, requirements when it's, presented to the state. So when Mike signs off on it, and if there's anything we want when we vote on this, it can be put on that, and it can see attached, just like any other application where we go to the state for a license. It's a biannual license, so when it comes up every 2 years, we could review it. And if there's any problems,
We have a copy of the statute. No, to hand in. I'm just checking to see if I have a copy of the statute to hand in.
We'll get a copy. The planner will get us a copy and put it in, and get it to us before the next meeting.
send it to him.
You can send it to us outside of the packet.
Right,
You could email it to us. I'm sure it's not 100 pages.
right, that's simple enough, but the issue is, does the applicant consent to keeping the hearing open?
Yes, if it's going to be helpful, of course. That means we do have a letter we can leave with you to keep the hearing open, yeah. So when's our next meeting?
24th.
Right, the 24th. So the commission would like the regulations and a copy of the pet facility license application.
Right.
I have a copy of that with us, too, we could hand in, but
Well, that would help the planner.
Well, and maybe if the commission had a chance right now to look at and discuss the application form, maybe then the commission wouldn't need the regulations themselves? Or do you think you're still going to want to see the regulations?
I would obviously much prefer to close the hearing and be able to have a decision at the next meeting. So, I have the statutes, I have the form. If there's something that you would like to talk about now, I'd be delighted to go through it with you. Could I have a copy of do I have the form in here? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, we can still accomplish her goal, right? We can keep it open and close it at the next meeting and move it into an action item. Right.
Yes, we could close it at the next meeting and move it to old business at the next
Doesn't
meeting.
mean it'll get pushed out
And
one
still
more
vote on
meeting.
it at the next meeting if we choose to do that. So there is that option.
I am submitting to you, just so you'll have in the record, the pet facility license form. And at the bottom, it says, to be completed by the zoning enforcement officer. This is a $400 application fee, we think. Zoning certificate is only required for a new facility. It's not required for old ones. Will not be issued by the Department of Agriculture unless this application is signed by a zoning official. The zoning official's signature certifies that the above business location and its proposed use are in conformance with the existing and city and town zoning regulations. And you have to have the town seal affixed to this to validate the zoning official's approval. This is the same type of certification that you get for a liquor permit or anything else that, like a car licensing facility that requires local approval first. So I leave this with you.
I still want to see the regulation and be able to read it.
Yeah, I realize what I have. I've just taken out excerpts from the regulation itself. So I'll let staff get it for you then, I guess. I don't have a clean version to give to you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll remove my motion from the table and I propose keeping petition 3417 open.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any questions or comments from the commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And can she continue to operate in the
Yeah, of
same
course.
situation as the prior
She
month?
can stay operating until we make a decision. Nothing has changed. Correct, Mr. Planner?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That ends the public hearing portion of the meeting. We get into the balance of this agenda right now. We'll let the room clear for a second.
Yeah, the fourth Wednesday. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, I'd be like, why would you put this?
3, 4, 3.
It's like,
Huh?
I can convince him.
Okay, we're going to continue with our hearing, our meeting, I'm sorry. The next item is approval of minutes. There's two meetings, 14th of December and a special meeting of 14th of December. Can I get a motion to move them?
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Motion made in second. Commissioner Woods.
My name is Woods, my last name. You have it as Wood? There's an S on it, okay. It's all right.
Okay, can we make that correction in the record? Any questions or comments or changes on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item under is, we already took up the new business with the Global Granite.
Well, technically, you took it up in the context of the special permit, so you still need to look at it as its own application, which it is. It's an application for site plan modification.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we already heard it. Do we want to hear? We
Yes.
have to hear it again.
A little bit for the minutes. Yes,
Okay,
please.
just if you would come forward, state your name and address for the record, and give us a real brief overview. We already know what you said, but
Bruno
just sort of for
Zavarella.
the record that we have, the proceedings are done in the correct manner.
Bruno Zavarella, 343 Brook Meadow Road, Berlin, Connecticut. The application is for the site modification at 331820 Berlin Turnpike. We're trying to get more parking and allow for the sign to be also installed at the street at Costello Road. There's another item that we were gonna...
The bond reduction.
Right.
That's the third item. We'll be getting to that later
Okay,
tonight.
so I'm still here.
Stick around for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions on this? We're going to take it up at the next meeting. So,
Just one procedurally, why are we doing a site plan? Is the site plan required for the sign, or is it two separate? It kind of like, it looks like they tied them together, and I'm just trying to figure out procedurally why we're doing that.
Right. They are separate. According to the zoning regulations, whenever a property owner wants to make a change to an approved site plan that involves parking, they have to come before the commission to get site plan modification. So even if Mr. Zavarelli never wanted to do the sign, he still would have had to come to you to get permission to modify the parking lot.
Yeah.
Right. As a happy coincidence, or maybe not happy coincidence, but as a coincidence, the commission felt the need for changes to the site before they felt comfortable, not that you have yet, to approve the sign, because the commission was concerned about the narrowness of the driveway. So the two issues are related but separate.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my hands around what the sign has to do with the site plan.
If maybe I can explain it real easy, we can't look at the sign, because it relates to the entrance where they want to put the sign, because without the modifications to the driveway, which he explained that he's going to widen the driveway, it wouldn't be prudent to have a sign there if you could only have one-way traffic.
Okay, so modifications are needed in the location of the sign?
No, they're needed for the parking, but we tried to make the sign where we could understand why he wanted it, where he wanted to put it, in relation to the whole overall master plan of the parcel. We have to look at both of them together so that we can make a determination that the driveway is safe and then it meets all the criteria to have a sign there in the first place. Because if the driveway is only big enough or it narrows down and bottlenecks and there's problems with the driveway, then to put the sign there and have people going in that way wouldn't be safe. So that's why we asked to put it together.
Okay.
I hope that explains it. We have the option to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Right. It's not.
I get it if it was a new building, I understand that, but I'm just...
Let me try this. The existing conditions over there didn't provide a safe means of access for in and out traffic. So that's the reason why we asked for a modification of the site plan and show that it was safe to encourage people with that sign there, to encourage people to enter and exit that way. We wanted to make sure it was safe.
No, all right, that makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. But the modification was specifically for the parking.
But that's a separate issue, nothing to
Yes.
do with the sign, but, okay.
Right. Because he wanted to relocate where the granite would be stored to free up more parking.
That part I get, that makes perfect sense to me.
And he needed the commission's permission to do that.
Okay.
We have a little latitude as to make it so it's clear to the commissioners, what we're actually looking at.
Yeah, and I've got a big learning curve. There's a lot to this commission that I don't know.
Okay, so we're into old business, Newington Ridge Preserve.
I put this on the agenda simply because, well, it's an item that the commission wants the opportunity or the ability to discuss at every meeting, but I have no new information to present of substance.
We were going to meet, Steve, with the developer, but apparently that never got really put together.
It did.
But
Unfortunately, by the time we could get together, I was away. The snow and ice came in, and there's probably a foot of frost in the ground, so.
Yeah, there was so much frost on the ground, it was useless to go there because nothing could have been completed by the contractor.
And he's coming in at the next meeting, I believe.
Yes, and hopefully he will have met with the homeowners before that so that he can have a fruitful discussion with the commission.
Yeah, and in Commissioner Payne's email, he stated that the developer actually did everything that the commission asked of him prior to the winter setting in. So he's trying. So, and again, it's very difficult to do anything out there right now.
I think the homeowners might have a preconceived understanding that they want maybe some items that don't fall under the site plan for us to contend with, and which we can't. There's items maybe inside their units that they're not happy with, or punch list items, or things like that, that could be exasperating the problem between the developer and the homeowners. But our responsibility begins and ends with the site plan. He has to comply with what we approved. And we can't go beyond that in deference to the developer and say, well, we want you to do this and this and this and this. If it doesn't fall under the site plan, I don't believe that we have the right to. There's other remedies that the homeowners have to get punch list items or other items that are not fall under the site plan. There's other remedies that they could pursue.
And Mr. Chairman, coming in late on this, I'm assuming that development, when it's done, that still remains a private road, not a town road?
Yeah, Gary, we were going to make sure that happens.
Okay.
It's not going to be
Won't be a town-accepted road?
No, we won't take over the road.
Okay.
You got to remember, he has 4 or 5 lots left to build on. I mean, this is not something that's going to happen like in the spring, we go in and it's going to be finished. This project could go on for another 4 or 5 years. He has to, I'm sure he's not building any houses over there on spec.
No.
On speculation. He's going to be building per pre-sales. He's going to build per sales. So he has to market them, he has to, so this stuff doesn't happen overnight and I hope the people realize that this guy's going to be around for quite some time to finish those houses. So it could be years. It's not something that's going to be resolved over the summer.
Well, it's been years already, right? I mean, this is developer number
They're not,
2.
I think it's going to be hard to get rid of the guy because he does have those other 5 lots.
Okay.
So we'll just keep it on the agenda and we'll have it for the next meeting.
Right. So I prepared a couple of draft motions for approval, anticipating that the commission might be prepared to approve a couple of the items tonight. And that's what I just distributed.
You're right there.
Oh, thank you.
Are these different than what's in here?
They might, I'd forgotten I gave them to you, so they wouldn't be different. They'll be the same. I didn't make any changes to them.
I just wanted
There's more of them, but,
No,
The first 2 items we moved to next meeting.
oh, next meeting? Okay, all right.
Did you move these to the?
Well, the site plan modification, you didn't say one way or the
we
other.
could do the one till today, we could then vote on it, today. Left it open to close, like you,
That's right, the sign one you did close to act on next week, right?
Site plan could be
And the
done.
site plan, do you want to act tonight or next week also?
I would rather do it together.
Okay, fine. And then we haven't gotten to it yet, but I also gave you a couple draft motions for the 2 bond release items that we'll be discussing in a few minutes.
Now, this bond release at 3320, that's the same piece of property.
Yes, yeah. But I'll be getting to that in a minute when I do my town planners report.
Okay, why don't we continue on with the agenda? Petitions for public hearing schedule, is there anything?
No.
Okay, town planners report. January.
Right, a couple of items. The grant application that we put together last year to get funding to help write some new TOD regulations and to do a TOD education program did not get approved. Just want to make you aware of that, unfortunately. And Newington Ridge Preserve. Okay, so that's basically just an update to the status of Newington Ridge Preserve. And then the next 2 items are a couple of bond release items. The first one is the Three Angels Church. The project is finished, and they've asked to have their $33,000 bond released. They did make a change to the site, and they made it unilaterally, but in consultation with the town engineer. Let me see if I have it here. I'm sorry, let me go back this way. We discussed it earlier tonight briefly, but let me display it here. Okay, just to make the commission aware that the property owner did make a change to the plan. And Commissioner Wood, if you're wondering, well, why didn't this have to come back to the commission? Because of just the way the regulations are written. Certain changes need commission's approval, certain changes only require staff approval. And the work is done, so the staff recommends that the bond be released. And then also, the Global Granite, let me just, I don't have a narrative for that, but the work is done except for the grass. The grass has not been stabilized because it is still the fall. So I do recommend we still hold back $1,000 of Global Granite's money, but the owner did request that we release the other $3,340
Where do those fall on for action on the agenda?
under the town planner report.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Why don't you
I move
proceed?
to reduce the performance bond at 3320 Berlin Turnpike from $4,340 to $1,000. Finding, one, the staff has inspected the site and found the work to be substantially in compliance with the site plan approval by TPZ on April 23, 2008. The turf is not yet established, so the staff recommends withholding $1,000. Conditions, none.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you're all set. So we're going to hold the $1,000 in the spring, do the seeding, and we'll release the other $1,000.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Regarding the previous thing for the site
Yeah.
plan, and I heard you state that you're gonna combine the site plan with the sign. If it's possible, can we get an approval on the site plan modification in today's hearing and then leave the sign part of it until we open up the restriction on that road? Is that possible to
Yeah,
do
that's,
that?
we could do that. I think
Okay,
that's,
that would be helpful if we
that's
could.
not unreasonable.
And this way I can plan for the springtime to get that work done.
What we were looking for was for you to be able to, for your own good,
Yeah.
was to have enough parking so that when you rent out the balance of the properties,
Yeah.
that the people are, you're able to get tenants and they'll say, well, we have parking, because the way it is now, you got granite all over the place.
Right, and we're changing
Yeah,
that. And the
okay.
other thing was on the sign itself, we have been approved on a pretty good sized sign. And if it makes the commission happy, or if I made it a little bit smaller, I would be willing to do that.
You're gonna wait until the spring until you do the,
Yeah, and if it were that it would make, it
yeah,
would,
because you can't put the sign up until you do the road.
absolutely. Well, I plan on doing that in the spring anyways, I just ran out of time,
Okay.
you know.
Okay,
You wanna
Mr.
move that?
Chairman, yeah, petition 43-17, site plan modification at 3318 Berlin Turnpike, Global Granite, Stone Rock LLC, owner Bruno Zavarelli, 343 Brook Meadow Road, Berlin, Connecticut, applicant contact. I move to approve petition 43-17, site plan modifications at 3318 Berlin Turnpike, Global Granite, Stone Rock LLC, owner Bruno Zavarelli, 343 Brook Meadow Road, Berlin, Connecticut, applicant contact, conditions, none.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you're all set with the site
Very good.
plan. We'll talk about the sign when you come back in the
Thank you
spring,
very
and
much.
everything. And we'll do something with the sign. We'll see what we could,
Okay.
after we look at what you did
However
there
I can
for the
satisfy everyone,
entrance.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move to release the performance bond in the amount of $33,000 at 580 Church Street. Findings, the staff has inspected the site and found the work to be substantially in compliance with the site plan approval by TPZ on July 23, 2008. Conditions, none.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comments? I'm gonna abstain from the vote because I'm, be consistent with, I'm a neighbor and I own property that abuts the church. To be consistent, with my actions in the past, I'll abstain. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All set. Okay, that takes care of the bonds and communications.
I have none.
Public participation. Anyone wishing to speak at this time, please come forward. Seeing none, remarks by commissioners. All set?
I said enough.
Huh?
I said enough.
Okay. Closing remarks, I have no closing remarks.
No one ran out tonight.
I would just ask the commissioners to be up on the provisions of the regulations that we have to act on in the next month or so.
Public,
What's that?
public participation.
We
Skipped
already
over it.
asked
Oh,
for
you
it.
did?
Yes,
missed it.
no one came up.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Didn't want you to get yelled at.
No, she ain't gonna yell at me. You wanna talk, Gail? Okay. Okay, so we're, get a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, just familiarize yourself